Hello. In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Tableau. In particular, we're going to say, once you have a Tableau graph, once you've put your variables in the columns or the rows, what do you do then? How can you manipulate that graph? How can you customize it? How can you decorate it? All those sorts of good things. Now, conveniently, Tableau sort of works on a point-and-click interface a lot like Excel, where in a lot of cases, if you want to edit something, all you have to do is click on that thing, and it will bring up a menu for you to edit. And this makes editing fairly easy. You don't have to look up a lot of documentation. You can just sort of say, hey, I want to edit that thing. I'm going to click on that thing. So let's talk about some of the ways in which we can do that, and also some of the ways in which we can go beyond that and do a little bit more. So in this worksheet that I'm working on, I've got a couple of different sheets with graphs already made up, and we can talk about how I did some of the customization to get where I wanted to go, and also how we could do some more customization. So here we have a bar graph that is showing repayment rates over time. So on the rows, I have a measure of the average of the repayment rate. In the columns, I have two variables. I have the type of degree being awarded, 4-year, less than 2-year, and 2-year. So the year, so it is separated in two different things, and I have categorized them as such. So what kinds of customization could I do here? So first thing to notice, I've also taken that pred degree variable, which is up here, and I've dragged it into the color tab here. So now not only is this variable on the x-axis, it is separating out the different groups here, but it's also it's demarcating by color, which might help distinguish things going on here. So the way that I did that is not by dragging it from here to the color, I dragged it from here as well to the color. That made it distinguished by color. I could do similar things for size if I wanted to, or label. I could label it using those values. But the key there is I dragged it there. And once it's there, I can do a couple things. I can click on color now that there is a variable there. I can edit the specific colors that are being used. And now if I do this, something to notice is that it's not just going to edit on this graph. That variable inherently is going to have that coloring associated with it, or at least by default. So if I go to a different graph and I use this variable again for coloring, it will match up with the graph that I already have. So maybe I want 2-year to be green instead of red right there. So if I do that, now it's green. There we go. I can edit the colors manually in that way. Something else you can note here, what else can we do with what we have? So one thing I can do is that Tableau is very good at letting me pick particular observations to isolate. Let's say I'm really only interested in 2013. I could go back to, if I was only working with this one graph, I could go back to the data connection and filter out to just the 2013 observations, which you can do. What I can do is I can click on just the 2013, and I can say, keep only those ones that I just picked right there. And it will redo the graph with just those observations right there. Everything else stays the same, just I've only picked those particular things. By the way, I can undo everything I'm doing. Tableau is very good at the undo, so I can do Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac, and I'm back to where I was before. What else could I do? I got a graph title up here. Of course, I can click on this and edit the title. Pretty much every title on here can be edited if I just double-click on it. I can also go over here to the axes. Now, you can edit the axes in a pretty easy way, too. If I right-click on an axis, I can do Edit Axis. So I can add a couple things here. I can go to tick marks and tell it to do, okay, well right now it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Don't have to be like that. I could manually say, hey, only give me 10, 40, and 80. So I could say tick interval 0.4. Only give me the 0.4s, and there we have it. I could do it like that. If I felt like it, I could add some minor tick marks, maybe on the 0.2s. Right there. On the general, I can do things like I can put it on a logarithmic scale, or I can reverse the scale if I feel like it. All right, so now it's on a logarithmic scale if I want that for some reason. Let's reset. Let's go back. What else can I do on this axis? Well, one thing that I can do, and if I do format, it brings it up over here. So I've told it that it's a percentage because I selected percentage in the scale and numbers category, but I can make it something else. Maybe I don't want it to be percentage. Maybe I want it to be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. And so I can give it a number, and then you can see 0.6, 0.7, 0.8 right there. I can make it anything I want. I can say, hey, that's dollars, right? That's 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents. That's not what it actually is, but I could tell it that's what it is. I can manipulate how many decimal places to show here. I can say what to do with negative values, display units, all sorts of things right there. So maybe let's go back to how it was. I can, of course, in addition to keeping observations, I can exclude them if I feel like it. So that's sort of what we can do here. So to sort of recap what we've just done, I've clicked on some observations, either keep them or exclude them. I've clicked on titles to change the titles. You can right-click on an axis and do edit the axis to change a number of properties about the axis, for example, putting it on a logarithmic scale. I can also edit the scale with format, and the format will allow me to edit the scale by putting in certain tick marks. It'll allow me to change it to percentages or dollar signs or whatever I think it needs to be, and things like font and color and the title of it and everything like that. I can also add annotations here. If I right-click in any area, I can go annotate. And let's say I want to annotate this point. I'm just going to add, hey. And it's just going to add a little annotation right there wherever I want that to go. Another thing that we can do is table calculations. So table calculations are ways that actually affect how the data is represented. So we've already talked a little bit about the ways in which the data is represented. Dimensions get plotted point by point. Measures get calculated upon before they are presented. So here, for example, we've got the average repayment rate over the different colleges in a given pred degree and a given year. But what if I want to do some sort of comparison beyond that? So here I've averaged out things over the years, but what if instead I wanted to compare across these different categories? Instead of showing you the actual percentage, maybe I want to compare. For that, let's go over here to this map, which, by the way, I can create a map by taking latitude and longitude and putting them into the columns and rows. If you're like, hey, where's the latitude and longitude? It's just in the variables here. If I have a map of type variable in there, which if you remember from the last video, I had state abbreviations in there. It recognized that as being maps. It has also calculated the latitude and longitude for all those states. So all I had to do to create this map was take latitude, which was automatically generated, put it in columns or in rows. Take longitude, which was automatically generated, put it in columns. It made me a map with the coloring based on the average earnings. Right? So earnings is a measure. Put it in there, and it has given me that. I've also put on the detail thing, state abbreviation, which when I hover over something, it's going to give me that state abbreviation right there, which is, of course, what I want to see, right? So it's going to tell me which state I'm dealing with. That's it. Table calculations. So notice here that I'm showing the average earnings by state. It's a little bit hard to distinguish. We got these different shades of blue. It's kind of difficult to distinguish the dark blue from the light blue, at least at a glance, exactly what's going on. Now, I could change the color scheme, but also I could make things relative to each other. That's what table calculations do. They say not just what is the value in this state, it's what is the value in this state relative to the other states. And so you can do things like what percentage of all the cases are in this state. In this case, I'm going to say, how is this state relative to the average state? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to the variable that I have. I'm going to click on the little down arrow, and I'm going to do an add a table calculation. In particular, I'm going to do a quick table calculation of just the difference. And this is going to give me the difference to the average state. So you can see that now I can really clearly see that some states are below average, some states are above average in terms of the earnings of their college graduates. Hey, looking good there, Michigan. All right, those are some of the basics of how we can decorate and manipulate the graphical options in Tableau Graph to make them look a little bit better, make them look exactly how we want them to. All right, thank you.